I had been planning a memorable 45th birthday celebration for my husband, JPVV, a milestone he was particularly eager to reach since his own father had sadly passed away at 37. The party was meant to be a joyful gathering of his nearest and dearest. In my efforts to make it special, I took great care in organizing every detail, from inviting his beloved mother, Sophia, who lived out of town, to ensuring that the decorations were just right. I even managed to keep it all a secret, telling JPVV that I would be spending the evening at my parents' house to lower his expectations and enhance the surprise. The night of the party, as JPVV's car pulled up, my excitement was palpable. Our friends and family hid in the dark, waiting to erupt into a cheerful surprise. Happy birthday as soon as he walked in. However, the joyous occasion I had envisioned crumbled in an instant. As the lights came on and we all shouted our surprise, JPVV entered, not alone, but in an intimate embrace with his coworker, Ellie, kissing her as if they were the only three people in the world. The room plunged into stunned silence, the air thick with shock and disbelief. Ellie was younger than us both and worked under JPVV. Though I had noticed her somewhat flirtatious nature at company events, where she jokingly referred to herself as his work wife, I had never taken it seriously. I assumed it was just her way of interacting playfully with her colleagues. But that night, as they stood there, oblivious to the hurt they were causing, JPVV went a step further, calling our marriage a mistake in front of everyone. It was a moment of profound betrayal, transforming a night that was supposed to celebrate life and love into a painful turning point in our lives. I had always trusted my husband completely, never considering the possibility that another woman could threaten our marriage. However, that belief shattered the moment I saw him kissing Ellie. It happened during his surprise birthday party, and the sight was more humiliating than I could have ever imagined. As the guests and I watched, stunned, my husband, seemingly intoxicated, broke the kiss and clumsily laughed it off, saying, "Oops," as if it were a minor slip-up. Ellie stood next to him, awkwardly adjusting her clothes, her lipstick nearly gone from their kiss. The silence in the room was palpable, every eye fixed on me, waiting for my reaction. Breaking the tension was my mother-in-law, Sophia, who stood up and shouted at John, demanding an explanation. My husband looked genuinely surprised to see her there and struggled to find his words, muttering something about not expecting everyone to be there. My heart pounded as I confronted him, demanding to know why he would do this, especially during a party that I had organized to celebrate him. He hesitated, then admitted that he and Ellie had been seeing each other for months and were falling in love. The room spun as he confessed, his words slicing through the festive atmosphere and leaving a cold, harsh reality in their wake. He continued, justifying his actions by talking about his late father, who had passed away young without fulfilling his dreams. "I don't want to end up like him," he declared, determined to live life on his own terms. I stood there, devastated, tears welling up in my eyes, unable to reconcile this declaration with the man I thought I knew. In a moment of raw emotion, I grabbed the birthday cake I had carefully chosen for him and threw it at him in a burst of fury. The cake smeared across his clothes, and the room erupted into a mix of gasps and laughter. Amidst this, John furiously wiped his face, angrily lamenting the mess on his shirt, oblivious to the deeper pain he had caused. It was absurdly trivial compared to the emotional turmoil he had just unleashed. This episode not only revealed the truth about his infidelity, but also showcased his lack of awareness and sensitivity towards the damage he had done to our marriage. It was a moment of profound betrayal and heartbreak, yet it was also a turning point for me to confront the reality of our relationship and consider what my next step should be. John had just embarrassed me in front of everyone at our gathering, flaunting his disloyalty without a second thought for me. As he rushed upstairs, presumably to change, I remained in the room, my gaze sweeping over the crowd. Once he was out of view, I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. I walked directly to her, seized her hair, and pulled her outside amidst her loud protests and accusations of rough treatment. However, no one intervened. The guests simply watched. Outside, Sophia was already verbally attacking Ellie for her audacity to pursue John at our home during our party, right in front of our friends. I confronted Ellie, my voice trembling with restrained rage. How could you do this? You know what this night means to us, how long we've been together. My words were fueled by disbelief and pain. Ellie, however, was unfazed and even dismissive. She retorted with a smug smirk, claiming that John preferred her and that it was only a matter of time before he left me. She suggested arrogantly that the failure of our marriage was my fault, that I was the reason he sought comfort in her. Her cruel words cut deep. Her taunts about how John found solace in her understanding and her company pushed me to the brink. Blinded by anger, I slapped her. The shock of the slap silenced her momentarily, turning her tears into sobs and curses. At that moment, Sophia intervened with a stern warning for Ellie to leave, threatening another slap if she didn't. The guests, drawn outside by the commotion, watched silently, their presence a heavy reminder of the spectacle we had become. And just then, as if scripted, John reappeared, freshly dressed and disturbingly calm. He saw Ellie's reddened cheek and immediately sided with her, protectively draping an arm around her, as though she was the aggrieved party. His indifference to the turmoil he had caused was palpable, heightening the surreal nature of the evening. He raised his voice at me, filled with anger and disappointment, as if I had crossed some unfathomable line. To him, I was the culprit, the one who had committed an unforgivable act. At that moment, I was the villain for confronting the woman he had been involved with. His words then shattered me anew. I can't handle this anymore. I'm done, he declared loudly. I want you out of our house by the time I return from our trip. I hope I never have to see your face again. He was not only leaving me, but also planning a weekend getaway with her, severing our marriage. I stood there, frozen, overwhelmed by disbelief and pain, as I watched him escort Ellie to his car. They drove off without a second glance, leaving me to stare after the taillights fading into the distance, feeling an immense emptiness. It felt as if my heart had been violently torn from my chest. Sophia, witnessing my devastation, took charge of the situation. She gracefully asked everyone to leave, thanking them and apologizing for the upheaval. People approached me with awkward hugs and words of comfort before departing, leaving me numb, still in shock over the ordeal. Once the room had cleared, Sophia guided me to sit and handed me a glass of water. With the room now quiet, the emotions I had pent up began to surface, and I broke down into heavy, uncontrollable sobs. The shock, the humiliation, and disbelief poured out. My husband had obliterated our marriage during his own surprise birthday party, flaunting his affair in front of friends and family, then callously telling me to leave. Through my tears, I confided in Sophia, expressing how lost and directionless I felt. After years of dedication, caring for him during his illnesses, managing our home, and sacrificing my career to be the stay-at-home wife he desired, he had left me with nothing. Sophia listened intently, then reminded me of an important detail I had overlooked. The house we lived in, which seemed like ours, was actually owned by her late husband. It was a place teeming with cherished memories, which she had generously allowed us to inhabit to start our family and build our life. At the time, it had felt like a benevolent fresh start in a supportive environment, but now, it was clear that everything we had built was in ruins, tainted by betrayal and a profound breach of trust. Sophia expressed her disappointment, lamenting her role in raising a son capable of such deceit. She shared her anguish with me, her voice heavy with the kind of sorrow only a mother can experience when she realizes her child has transformed into someone unrecognizable. Pulling me into a comforting embrace that also felt like a vow, she then fixed her gaze upon me and firmly declared, "This is my house, and I decide who lives here, and I choose you." Her words were my anchor, granting me a semblance of control in a tumultuous situation. She continued, her tone resolute as she expressed her determination not to let John and Ellie undermine what we had. She wanted to make it clear to John that his actions would have serious, hurtful consequences. He needs to learn that he can't just break a marriage and walk away scot-free, she stated. Then, with a slight smile that brought a brief moment of levity to the chaos, she added, "There's no way I'm letting Ellie Scania move in here and disrupt our family home." Sophia's unexpected protectiveness was a surprise. I had assumed she would side with her son. Yet here she was, standing in my corner. John might have believed he could leave our marriage for another, but Sophia and I were set on showing him that life wouldn't be so simple. Sophia's support was a lifeline, lifting the heavy burden of uncertainty. That weekend, we formalized my stay through a rental agreement, providing tangible proof to safeguard my place in the home I cherished. With everything official, I took on the task of packing up John's belongings. It was strangely therapeutic to box up the remnants of our life together and stack them neatly on the porch for him to collect upon his return. A week later, I watched from the window as his car pulled into the driveway. By then, I had installed security cameras and changed the locks, a necessary precaution. When he tried his key and found himself locked out, his frustration was palpable. As he pounded on the door, his shouts echoing against the sturdy wood, I remained calm, watching through the camera. Instead of opening the door, I addressed him through the intercom, my tone nonchalant. "What are you doing here, John?" His reply came fast and furious, accusing me of overstaying my welcome. But I was unshaken, prepared to stand my ground and protect my space, no longer a passive figure in my own story. He stood there, insisting that I should have left already. His voice, dripping with disdain, bombarded me with complaints about how he was fed up with what he called my neediness and desperation. He expressed his frustration about our ended marriage, which he had publicly declared over, yet here I was, still in the house he wanted to leave behind. He vehemently stated that he wanted the divorce finalized and for me to vanish from his life. It was then that his gaze landed on the boxes outside. A quiet moment passed as he processed that they were his possessions, not mine. The sight of his packed belongings seemed to mute him momentarily before he scoffed, dismissing it all as some absurd prank. Yet he knew it was real. "You think you can just throw my stuff out? You think you can get away with this?" he yelled, approaching the door with a fierce determination, pounding on it as his anger resurfaced. "You have no right. I'll take this to court if I must," he roared, his voice shaking with rage. I watched silently, observing through the security camera as he paced the porch, his tirade almost comical in its futility. He still believed he controlled the situation. Calmly, I spoke through the intercom, explaining that the house was actually owned by his mother, not him. I had legally rented it from Sophia, making it my rightful residence. I informed him that he was actually trespassing and that if he wished to pursue legal action, he was welcome to try, though I doubted he'd have a strong case. I firmly requested that he remove his belongings and leave at once, or I would involve the police. Confusion swept over John's face as he struggled to grasp the reality unfolding before him. It was almost pitiful, the way he froze, processing the shift in power. But soon, fury took over and he whipped out his phone, likely calling his mother in a desperate attempt for support. However, I was confident Sophia would reinforce what I had just explained. This was no longer his home, and he needed to accept the consequences of his actions. As I watched him furiously pace, kicking and scattering the contents of the boxes in anger, it was clear his conversation with Sophia hadn't gone his way. His frustration peaked as he hurled insults through the door, labeling me a thief and vowing retribution. Yet, I chose not to engage with his provocations. There was no point. He was powerless to alter the situation. Despite his threats to drag this matter through the courts, both of us knew he had no substantial grounds. I had adhered strictly to the rules, and he could not justly claim any wrongdoing on my part, especially after he had so blatantly breached our marriage vows in the most hurtful ways. Eventually, the intensity of his outrage waned. Defeated and resigned, he began to load his possessions into his car. I observed as he packed the last of his belongings, his movements heavy with the weight of his new reality. As he closed the trunk, the fight had clearly left him, a stark acknowledgement that there was no victory to be had. The day the car door slammed shut and it drove off marked a significant shift in my life. Since then, I've been inundated with voicemails from both John and Ellie, each one filled with more resentment than the last. Ellie, in particular, took pleasure in denigrating me, calling me a witch for having John removed from our home. She lamented over their shattered dreams of building a life together in that house, accusing me of stealing that future from them. As it turns out, John has been staying in a motel because Ellie, who lives with 3 other roommates, cannot have him move in due to her landlord's strict rules. I find it ironic. If they were really committed, Ellie would break her lease and find a new place for them. But now, that's their concern, not mine. My focus has shifted to ensuring John faces the consequences of his actions. After what he did, I've filed for divorce and am ready to ensure he pays substantial alimony. He thought he could leave our marriage scot-free, but he is soon to learn that every action has repercussions, especially after betraying someone who is nothing but loyal. I sent an email to John's company detailing his affair with Ellie, describing the breach of both personal trust and workplace ethics. I included observations of Ellie flirting with senior men at company events, aiming to expose the affair not just as a personal betrayal, but as a professional misconduct. To my surprise, the company took my claims seriously and began an investigation, prompted by my email and corroborated by complaints from other employees about John's favoritism towards Ellie. Eventually, I was informed by colleagues, who have become friends, that John was terminated from his job due to the findings of the investigation. The satisfaction of knowing he was held accountable, at least in his professional life, was immense. As for Ellie, her future remains uncertain. For those concerned about my financial situation after my husband John's potential dismissal, I want to reassure you that I am in a strong position. Throughout our marriage, John earned a considerable amount of money, much of which he never spent on our family. We rarely went on vacations, seldom had date nights, and he hardly ever purchased gifts for me. Looking back, the warning signs were always apparent, but I chose to overlook them. Now, my primary focus is on finalizing the divorce and ensuring I receive what I am rightfully owed after enduring so much. I'm determined not to settle for less than what's fair, especially considering John's job loss and the unfolding events, which feel like a doorway to a new beginning for me. I have been officially divorced from my ex for a while now and have even begun dating again. During the divorce, John resented me, blaming me for his job loss, but there was little he could do. Multiple people witnessed him kissing another employee, Ellie, at his surprise party and overheard his admission of the affair. Although the divorce settlement wasn't enormous, it was sufficient to start rebuilding my life. One of the first things I did post-divorce was take a solo vacation to a beach where I relaxed and enjoyed cocktails all day. I'm currently working part-time at a friend's boutique and considering full-time employment opportunities in the future. My friend Sophia has been incredibly supportive through these challenging times, providing empathy and space that have been crucial for my healing. As for John and Ellie, they are still together. Although Ellie wasn't dismissed from the company, her reputation has suffered significantly. Many colleagues now avoid her, not wanting to be linked with the scandal that shook our company.